Welcome to this version of Pit Stop with Traffic Jam Jimmy. Well, today I'm at Martin's Airport at the air show. And right there, if you flew in World War II, you learned on an airplane like this. And then you walked up, you stepped up, and learned on the T-6. You flew that baby. And then you were ready for the B-29 or the Mustang. All right, we're down here at Martin's with Steve. Steve, this is a T-6. Tell me a little bit about the T-6.
Well, the T-6 was an advanced trainer during World War II. So the pilots would start training with something called a primary trainer, like that Stearman biplane, the yellow and blue aircraft that you saw. And then when they graduated from that, they'd move into this larger aircraft, more powerful, 450 horsepower engine. They train in this, and then when they completed their training, they'd move into fighters or bomber training.
Well, right now, what we're seeing is that one of the pilots is actually letting a civilian in and see the plane on.
Yes.
So this is all part of the air shows?
Yeah, so this aircraft is one of about 180 owned by the Commemorative Air Force. We're a nonprofit, and our mission is to honor, educate, and inspire. So we want to honor the men and women who built, maintained, and flew these aircraft, educate future generations about the work that they did and the sacrifices they made to give us the freedoms that we enjoy today, and then of course inspire the next generation to become pilots, like this young man in the cockpit.
How awesome is that?
And of the about 180 aircraft we have, about 90% of them are in flying condition, and they are all World War II vintage aircraft.
So they're flying museums, basically.
Yes, that's exactly right. What we do is we tour the country with different aircraft, so we bring that flying museum to you so you can come and see it.
Well, now, over your shoulder, I think that's a B-29, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
I'd love to go over and see that thing.
So the B-29 is one of two left flying in the world. Fifi has been flying for 50 years now. We pulled her out of the desert in 1971, spent about 3 years restoring her to flying condition, and have been touring with her ever since.
And you told me I could go see Alan and he'll tell me all about that?
Yes, sir. Al is our pilot, and he's been flying the aircraft for a number of years, and very knowledgeable about all the specifics of that aircraft.
Now, you're down here in Middle River today, and how many states are you going to travel upon?
So we've got about 25 different tour stops this season, all over the country. We were in Tennessee prior to being here. From here, we're going to Reading, Pennsylvania to the World War II weekend, and then from there we go to Trenton, New Jersey, on to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, upstate New York, and then we'll go to the Midwest.
All right. I think I'm going to go up after the pilot's done with the showing the boy that cockpit. I think I'm going to ask him a couple questions.
Great. And last thing, if you want to see a schedule of where the aircraft will be, you can go to airpowertour.org, and that has a list of all of our tour stops. Also, you can fly in these aircraft. We do rides in them, and there's a list of aircraft that will be at each stop, and you can book a flight online, again, at airpowertour.org.
What other planes were here?
So we had 4 aircraft here. We had the Stearman, which was our primary trainer, then the AT-6 Texan, which was the advanced trainer. Then we had a fighter, a P-51 Mustang, probably every pilot's favorite aircraft, very accomplished fighter during the war, would fly fighter escort 4 aircraft like the B-29. And lastly, we had the B-29, the largest bomber in the Allied arsenal, most advanced aircraft of its day.
And they didn't make as much noise as these modern day jets, huh?
They made a lot of noise, but a different sounding noise, much prettier sound with that throaty rumble of 4 Wright 3350 engines, 2,000 horsepower each. When you see her fly, you can feel the ground vibrate. There's a nice throaty roar to it, puff of smoke when it starts with that oil, and it's really an amazing experience. And that's why we, again, keep these airplanes in flying condition. It's one thing to see an airplane in a museum. It's a whole different thing to be able to hear the sounds, the sights, the smells of World War II. And that's why we bring these aircraft all around the country straight to the people.
Now, there's not that many World War II veterans left, but do you ever come across the ones that have flown in these vehicles?
Sadly, you're right. We're losing more and more veterans every day, but we do get lots of veterans that come out, and over the years, we've had many, many veterans. One who sadly passed earlier this year was 102 years old. His name was Bob Vaucher. He was the honorary air boss for the Arsenal of Democracy in September 2020. He took delivery of the first Boeing B-29 that the Army Air Corps received from Boeing. He also led the show of force flight over the USS Missouri when they signed the surrender documents with Japan. He was a mission commander. He was in B-29, number one, had 524 B-29s following him, flying over during the surrender ceremony. So he saw the entire breadth of the war in the B-29.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
well, Steve, thanks for your time, buddy.
Thank you.
And if people want to get more information, what was that website?
For more information about the Air Power History Tour with the B-29, go to airpowertour.org.
All right, I'm down here. Al, you're the expert on the B-29. Can you tell me about it?
Well, I'm the aircraft commander of it. This B-29A was built in Renton, Washington. It was delivered to the Air Force in July 31st, 1945, 2 weeks before the war ended, and stayed in the inventory of the Air Force through about 1956. And we picked it up after it was for about 15 years. So CAF has been operating it since 1971 approximately, and been out as a flying museum for many years.
How important is it to get these old planes back out and so people can see them?
I think it's critical because there are a lot of B-29s. I say a lot. There are a dozen or so that are in museums, but you can't touch them. You can't get in them. And here people can get the full experience, come through our bomb bay, up into the cockpit, and purchase a ride, and really get the experience somewhat of what a crew would see when they were going off on a mission.
So where are you traveling at throughout the states?
Well, we've got about 25 tour stops this summer. Martin State we were at, and Reading at the World War II weekend, and then Trenton, New Jersey, Westfield, then up to Nashua we're going, and from there we'll be going to Niagara Falls, Pontiac, Michigan, Chicago area, and so on. So there are many opportunities. If you look at our website, airpowertour.org, you can see where we're going to be and which aircraft will be there.
Now, there's not a lot of WW2 servicemen left, but some are. Do you ever come across them and they come out and look at these and say, wow, is it one of them?
So in the 10 years that I've been doing this, I have met a fair number of World War II crew members, and it really inspires us. And so there are fewer and fewer, but still some. So every tour stop, we generally have one or two, and we just love to see them. And then, of course, their families who are somewhat familiar with what their dad or their grandfather did. And so we just love having them reconnect with this aircraft. I have a number of friends who are World War II veterans, and they're very dear to me.
Can we take a walk around and talk about the plane? So we'll start here.
All right, so these have large engines. You can see they're Wright 3350s. They're 2,000 horsepower apiece. And they've been upgraded and improved over the years, so they went from being sort of a development type engine to being very robust for us.
All right, so how many man crew is this at one time?
A normal crew would be 10, and if they had radar, there would be an additional crew member, so 11. And a lot of them did have radar.
What was their traveling range as far as fuel?
Well, you know, they had to go from the Marianas Islands up to Japan. It's 1,500 miles, and that was a pretty full load for them to go 1,500 miles, and then in the battle area, and then return. So that could be a 15-hour mission pretty easily. It's over 3,000 miles round trip.
Are they doing maintenance on the thing now?
Well, we're always doing something with the aircraft because we're on the road continuously. We're just doing some adjustments here today. So we're very happy to have 3 of our mechanics with us, and they just tweak the aircraft. And we flew it today, did some ride flights. We're going to fly it up to our next stop here tomorrow, and the airplane will be in great shape for us.
Well, Alan, I appreciate your time and educating us on this beautiful plane.
Well, you're welcome. I'm happy to speak with you and give you some of the history of this great aircraft.
What'd you think, buddy?
Really cool. Thank you, sir. All right, you're welcome. All right, I'm gonna
Okay, John, you were showing them young ones the cockpit and all. Tell me a little bit of history of this T6.
Well, this is a very special T6. It's one of a kind. It's the only known T6 to be a part of the WASP squadron.
And what is the WASP?
The WASP squadron stands for Women Air Corps Service Pilot. And during the war, there were a shortage of pilots. And so there was a squadron that started up to train women to help out in the war effort. And what they were doing is moving airplanes around, ferrying them from place to place, delivering them all around the world. And then they were also helping to actually fix them. So they do maintenance test flights and help the mechanics kind of refine and even do test pilot work. So they played a crucial role from 42 to the beginning of 1944. They were actively flying just about every aircraft in the inventory.
Wow, I don't think people know that.
No.
My wife would be proud to hear that.
Yeah.
All right, so you say this plane is very one of a kind. Explain what they use this plane for.
Well, this is a T6 trainer, and what makes it unique isn't what it is. Like most World War II pilots trained in this airplane. It was the last assigned trainer before they went on to, say, a P-51 Mustang or a P-40. What makes it unique is that it was the only one that we know of that was part of the WASP squadron. It's kind of a neat story of how that happened. This is a G model, and it was upgraded. So the Air Force took it back, brought it back to the factory. They kind of disassemble it a little bit, and then they want to upgrade it. And when they do those upgrades, they remove all the data tags. And this one, they forgot to remove one of the data tags. And that's how we can trace the history back far enough to actually validate that it was part of the WASP squadron.
Of course. How excited are people in different cities to see these historic planes?
You know, it's one of the most fun parts of me flying and donating our time to this effort is the reactions from people. I really enjoy flying youngsters all the way up to, I just flew a 93-year-old named James. So it's pretty fantastic to share the experience and see the smiles on everyone's face.
Have you ever flown a World War II veteran?
James was a 93-year-old World War II veteran.
Wow.
So he was a unique guy to ride with.
And I bet he was 12 years old when he was inside that plane.
I think you're right.
All right, well, John, thank you for your time, and thank you for do what you do.
My pleasure.
So we're out here in Martin's with pilot Bill. And Bill, tell us about what's right here we're looking at.
Yeah, Phil Webb from Pensacola, Florida. This is the mighty Boeing Stearman, the PT-13D that was used for primary training during World War II.
So this was the starter plane, you could say, huh?
Yeah, step one.
Step one. So how long was it used for?
Okay, so this plane was used throughout the war, World War II, so until about 1945. At that point, they started using the T6 Texan as both a primary and an advanced trainer.
Gotcha. So what do you like about this plane?
Hey, what I like about this plane is the classic open cockpit biplane experience. It doesn't get any better than this. Look at that. There is nothing around you, open cockpit.
Now,
you are unimpeded to see the world around you from this aircraft.
When you come in, it looks like you're in slow motion.
Well, this plane's not exactly fast, and that's because it's a biplane. And if you look up here at these top wings, you have all of this wing surface area. You have all of these struts and flying wires and braces and whatnot. So for 225 horsepower, you got a lot of stuff you're trying to push through the air. So she's not particularly fast, but she's very maneuverable, and she's fun to fly.
There you go. So it's a perfect trainer for the beginner.
Oh, absolutely. There are several things that made this the perfect trainer. Number one, a very simple aircraft, so you weren't overwhelming the student. Number two, she's very responsive, very maneuverable, and very forgiving. So all of those traits made this the ideal trainer.
I will thank you, Bill.
All right, sir. Thanks so much for coming out and supporting the CAF.